ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Namaskar my dear friends, this is video number 55 on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna Parmahamsa. This video starts with Brahma and Maya. Of Brahma and Maya, the Jnani rejects Maya. Maya is like a veil. You see, I hold the towel between you and the lamp. You no longer see the light of the lamp. Sri Ramakrishna put the towel between himself and the devotees. Master, now you cannot see my face anymore. As Ram Prasad said, raise the curtain and behold. The Bhakta, however, does not ignore Maya. He worships Mahamaya. Taking refuge in her, he says, O Mother, please stand aside from my path. Only if you step out of my way shall I have the knowledge of Brahma. The Jnanis explain away all three states, waking dream and deep sleep. But the Bhaktas accept them all. As long as there is the ego, everything else exists. So long as the I exists, the Bhakta sees that it is God who has become Maya, the universe, the living beings, and the 24 cosmic principles. Narendra and the other devotees sat silently listening. Master, but the theory of Maya is dry. To Narendra, repeat what I said. Narendra, Maya is dry. Sri Ramakrishna affectionately stroked Narendra's face and hands and said, your face and hands show that you are a bhakta, but the jnani has different features. They are dry. Wicked ego and spiritualized ego. Even after attaining jnana, the jnani can live in the world retaining vidya maya, and that is to say bhakti, compassion, renunciation and such virtues. This serves him two purposes. First, the teaching of man, and second, the enjoyment of divine bliss. If a jnani remains silent, merged in samadhi, then men's hearts will not be illumined. Therefore, Shankaracharya kept the ego of knowledge, and further, a jnani lives as a devotee in the company of bhaktas in order to enjoy and drink deep of the bliss of God. The ego of knowledge and the ego of devotion can do no harm. It is the wicked I that is harmful. After realizing God, a man becomes like a child. There is no harm in the ego of a child. It is like the reflection of a face in a mirror. The reflection cannot call names, or it is like a burnt rope which appears to be a rope but disappears at the slightest puff. The ego that has been burnt in the fire of knowledge cannot injure anybody. It is an ego only in name. Returning to the relative plane after reaching the absolute is like coming back to the shore of a river after going to the other side. Such a return to the relative plane is for the teaching of man and for enjoyment, participation in the divine sport in the world. Sri Ramakrishna was talking in a very low voice. Addressing the devotees, he said, the body is so ill, but the mind is free from avidya maya. Let me tell you, there is no thought in my mind of Ramlal or home or wife, but I have been worrying about Purna, that Kasta boy. I am not in the least anxious about the others. It is God alone who has kept the Vidya Maya in me for the good of man, for the welfare of the devotees. No liberation for divine incarnations. But if one retains Vidya Maya, one comes back to this world. The avatars keep this Vidya Maya so long as a man has even the slightest desire. He must be born again and again. When he gets rid of all desires, then he is liberated. But the bhaktas do not seek liberation. If a person dies in Banaras, he attains liberation, he is not born again. Liberation is the god of their jnanis. Liberation is the goal of the jnanis. Narendra, the other day we went to visit Mahimacharan, master, smiling well. Narendra, I have never before met such a dry jnani. Master, what was the matter? Narendra, he asked us to sing Gangadhar saying, Radha is restored to life by hearing her Krishna's name. She looks about in front of her. She sees a tamla tree. On hearing this song, Mahimacharan said, why such songs here? I do not care for love and all that nonsense. Besides, I live here with my wife and children. Why all these songs here? Master to him. Do you see how afraid he is? Sunday, March 14, 1886. Sri Ramakrishna sat facing the north in the large room upstairs. It was evening. He was very ill. Narendra and Rakhal were gently massaging his feet. And sat nearby. The master, by a sign, asked him to stroke his feet. M obeyed. The previous Sunday, the devotees had observed Sri Ramakrishna's birthday with worship and prayer. His birthday the year before had been observed at Dakshineswar with great pomp, but this year, on account of his illness, the devotees were very sad and there was no festivity at all. The Holy Mother busied herself day and night in the Master's service. Among the young disciples, Narendra, Rakhal, Niranjan, Sarat, Sasi, Baburam, Jogin, Latu, and Kali had been staying with him at the garden house. The older devotees visited him daily and some of them occasionally spent the night there. That day Sri Ramakrishna was feeling very ill. At midnight the moonlight flooded the garden, but it could wake no response in the devotees' hearts. They were drowned in a sea of grief. They felt that they were living in a beautiful city besieged by a hostile army. Perfect silence reigned everywhere. Nature was still except for the gentle rustling of the leaves at the touch of the south wind. Sri Ramakrishna lay awake. One or two devotees sat near him in silence. At times he seemed to doze. Master's great spring. M was seated by his side. Sri Ramakrishna asked him by a sign to come nearer. The sight of his suffering was unbearable. In a very soft voice and with great difficulty, he said to M, I have gone on suffering so much for fear of making you all weep. But if you all say, oh, there is so much suffering, let the body die, then I may give up the body. These words pierced the devotees' hearts, and he who was their father, mother, and protector had uttered these words. What could they say? All sat in silence. Some thought Is this another crucifixion, the sacrifice of the body for the sake of the devotees? It was the dead of night. Sri Ramakrishna's illness was taking a turn for the worse. The devotees wondered what was to be done. One of them left for Calcutta. That very night, Greece came to the garden house with two physicians, Upendra and Navagopal. The devotee sat near the master. He felt a little better and said to them, "The illness is of the body, that is as it should be. I see that the body is made of the five elements." Turning to Greece, he said, "I am seeing many forms of God. Among them I find this one also, meaning his own form." Monday, March 15, 1886. About 7 o'clock in the morning, Sri Ramakrishna felt a little better. He talked to the devotees, sometimes in a whisper, sometimes by signs. Narendra, Rakhal, Latu, M. Gopal of Sinthi and others were in the room. They sat speechless and looked grave, thinking of the master's suffering of the previous night, his vision of unity. Master to the devotees, "Do you know what I see? Right now I see that it is God Himself who has become all this. It seems to me that man and other living beings are made of leather, and that it is God Himself who, dwelling inside these leather cases, moves the hands, the feet, the heads. I had a similar vision once before when I saw houses, gardens, roads, men, cattle, all made of one substance. It was if they were all made of wax. I see that it is God Himself who has become the block, the executioner, and the victim for the sacrifice." As he describes the staggering experience in which he realizes in full the identity of all within the one being, he is overwhelmed with emotion and exclaims, "Ah, what a vision!" Immediately, Sri Ramakrishna goes into Samadhi. He completely forgets his body and the outer world. The devotees are bewildered, not knowing what to do. They sit still. Presently, the master regains partial consciousness of the world and says, "Now I have no pain at all. I am my old self again." The devotees are amazed to watch this state of the master beyond pleasure and pain, weal and woe. He casts his glance on Latu and says, "There is a Lotto." He bends his head, resting it on the palm of his hand. I see that it is God Himself who rests His head on His hand. Sri Ramakrishna looks at the devotees, and his love for them wells up in a thousand streams, like a mother showing her tenderness to her children. He touches the faces and chins of Rakhal and Narendra, master about himself. A few minutes later, he says to M, "If the body were to be preserved a few days more, many people would have their spirituality awakened." He pauses a few minutes, "But this is not to be. This time the body will not be preserved." The devotees eagerly awaits the master's next words. "Such is not the will of God. This time the body will not be preserved, lest, finding me childless and foolish, people should take advantage of me, and lest I, childless and foolish as I am, should give away everything to everybody." In this Kali Yuga, you see, people are averse to meditation and japa. Rahal tenderly, please speak to God that He may preserve your body some time more. Master, that depends on God's will. Narendra, your will and God's will have become one. Sri Ramakrishna remains silent. He appears to be thinking about something. Master to Narendra, Rahal, and others. And nothing will happen if I speak to God. Now I see that I and the mother have become one. For fear of her sister in law, Radha said to Krishna, please dwell in my heart. But when later on she became very eager for a vision of Krishna, so eager that her heart pined and panted for her beloved, he would not come out. Rahal, in a low voice to the devotees, he is referring to God's incarnation as Gauranga. The devotees sit silently in the room. Sri Ramakrishna looks at them tenderly, then he places his hand on his heart. He is about to speak. Master to Narendra and the others. There are two persons in this. One, the Divine Mother. He pauses, the devotees eagerly look at him to hear what he will say next. Master, yes, one is she, and the other is her devotee. It is the devotee who broke his arm, and it is the devotee who is now ill. Do you understand? The devotee sit without uttering a word. Master, alas, to whom shall I say all this? Who will understand me? Pausing a few moments, he says, God becomes man, an avatar, and comes to earth with his devotees, and the devotees leave the world with him. Rahal, therefore we pray that you may not go away and leave us behind. Sri Ramakrishna smiles and says, a band of minstrels suddenly appears, dances and sings, and it departs in the same sudden manner. They come and return, but none recognize them. The master and the devotees smile. After a few minutes, he says, suffering is the inevitable when assumes a human body. Every now and then I say to myself, may I not have to come back to earth again, but there is something else. After enjoying sumptuous feast outside, one does not relish cheap home cooking. Besides, this assuming of a human body is for the sake of the devotees. Sri Ramakrishna looks at Narendra very tenderly. Master teaches Narendra Brahmagana. Master to Narendra. An outcast was carrying a load of meat. Shankaracharya, after bathing in the Ganges, was passing by. Suddenly, the outcast touched him. Shankara said sharply, "What you touched? Why? What you touched me?" "Revered sir," he replied, "I have not touched you, nor have you touched me. Reason with me. Are you the body, the mind, or the buddhi? Analyze what you are. You are the pure Atma, unattached and free, unaffected by the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. Do you know what Brahma is like? It is like air. Good and bad smells are carried by the air, but the air itself is unaffected. Narendra, yes sir. Master, he is beyond the gunas and Maya, beyond both the Maya of knowledge and the Maya of ignorance. Woman and gold is the Maya of ignorance. Knowledge, renunciation, devotion, and other scriptural qualities are the splendors of the Maya of knowledge, ego of knowledge. Shankaracharya kept this Maya of knowledge, and that you and these others feel concerned about me is also due to this Maya of knowledge. Following the Maya of knowledge step by step, one attains the knowledge of Brahma. This Maya of knowledge may be likened to the last few steps of the stairs. Next is the roof. Some even after reaching the roof go up and down the stairs. That is to say, some even after realizing God retain the ego of knowledge. They retain this in order to teach others, taste divine bliss and sport with the devotees of God. Narendra, some people get angry with me when I speak of renunciation. Master, in a whisper, renunciation is necessary. Pointing to his different limbs, if one thing is placed upon another, you must remove the one to get the other. Can you get the second thing without removing the first? Narendra, true sir, master, in a whisper to Narendra, when one sees everything filled with gold alone, does one see anything else? Narendra, must one renounce the world? Master, did not I say just now, when one sees everything filled with gold alone, does one see anything else? Does one then see any such thing as the world? I mean mental renunciation. Not one of those who have come here is a worldly person. Some of them had a slight desire, for instance, a fancy for women. Rakhal and M smile, and that desire has been fulfilled. The master looks at Narendra tenderly and becomes filled with love. Looking at the devotees, he says, Grand. With a smile, Narendra asks the master, What is grand? Master smiling, I said that preparations are going on for a grand renunciation. Narendra and the devotees look silently at the master. Rakhal resumes the conversation. Rakhal smiled to the master. Narendra is now beginning to understand you rather well. Sri Ramakrishna laughs and says, Yes, that is so. I see that many others too are beginning to understand too. Is not that so? Yes, sir. Narendra and M. Sri Ramakrishna turns his eyes to Narendra and M, and by a sign of his finger draws the attention of the devotees to them. He first points out Narendra and then M. Rahul understand the master's hint and says to him with a smile, Don't you mean the Narendra has the attitude of a hero and he, meaning M, that of a handmaid of God? Sri Ramakrishna laughs. Narendra smiling to Rahul. He, meaning M, does not talk much and is bashful. Is that why you say he is a handmaid of God? Master smiling to Narendra. Well, what do you think of me? Narendra, you are a hero, a handmaid of gold and everything else. These words fill Sri Ramakrishna with divine emotion. He places his hand on his heart and is about to say something. He says to Narendra and the other devotees, I see that all things, everything that exists have come from this. He asks Narendra by a sign, What did you understand? Narendra, all created objects have come from you. The master's face beams with joy. He says to Rakhal, Did you hear what he said? Sri Ramakrishna asks Narendra to sing. Narendra intones a hymen. His mind is full of renunciation. He sings, Unsteady is water on the lotus petal. Just as unsteady is the life of man, one moment with a sadhu is the boat that takes one across the ocean of this world. Narendra has hardly finished one or two lines when Sri Ramakrishna says to him by a sign, What are you singing? There is a very insignificant attitude, a very commonplace thing. Now Narendra sings about the love of Krishna, impersonating one of his handmaids. How strange, O friend, are the rules of life and death. The youth of Braja has read away, and this poor maid of Braja soon will die. Madhva is in love with other maids more beautiful than I. Alas, he has forgotten the milkman's artless daughter, who would ever have guessed, dear friend, that he, a lover so tender, so divine, could be a beggar simply for outward charm? I was a fool not to have seen it before, but carried away by his beauty, I yearned why I yearned alone to hold his 2 feet to my breast. Now I shall drown myself in the Jamna's stream, or take a draught of poison, friend, or I shall bind a creeper round my neck, or hang myself from a young tamla tree, or failing all of these, destroy my wretched self by chanting Krishna's name. Sri Ramakrishna and the devotees are greatly moved by the song. The master and Rahul shed tears of love. Narendra is intoxicated with the love of the gopis of Braja for their sweetheart Sri Krishna and sings, O Krishna, beloved, you are mine. What shall I say to you, O Lord? What shall I ever say to you? Only a woman am I, and never fortune's favorite. I do not know what to say. You are the mirror for the hand, and you are the flower for the hair. O friend, I shall make a flower of you, and wear you in my hair, under my braids. I shall hide you, friend. No one will see you there. You are the betel leaf for the lips, the sweet collyrium for the eyes. O friend, with you I shall stain my lips. With you I shall paint my eyes. You are the sandal paste for the body. You are the necklace for the neck. I shall anoint myself with you, my fragrant sandal paste, and soothe my body and my soul. I shall wear you my lovely necklace here about my neck, and you will lie upon my bosom, close to my throbbing heart. You are the treasure in my body, you are the dweller in my house. You are to me, O Lord, what wings are to the flying bird, what water is to the fish. Chapter number 50, The Master and Buddha. Friday, April 9, 1886. It was 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Narendra, Kali, Niranjan and M were talking to talking downstairs in the Kasipur garden house. Niranjan to M. Is it true that Vidyasagar is going to open a new school? Why don't you try to secure employment there for Narendra, I have had enough of service under Vidyasagar. Narendra's visit to Bodh Gaya. Narendra had just returned from a visit to Bodh Gaya, where he had gone with Kali and Tarak. In that sacred place he had been absorbed in deep meditation before the image of Buddha. He had paid his respects to the Bodhi tree, which is an offshoot of the original tree under which Buddha attained nirvana. Kali said one day at Gaya at Mes Babu's house, Narendra sang many classical songs to the accompaniment of the mridanga. Sri Ramakrishna sat on his bed in the big hall upstairs. It was evening and was alone in the room. Planning the master, Latu came in a little later. Master to M, please bring a chadar for me and a pair of slippers. M, yes sir. Master to Latu, the chadar will cost 10 annas and then the slippers. What will be the total cost? Latu, 1 rupee and 10 annas. Sri Ramakrishna asked M by a sign to note the price. Narendra entered the room and took a seat. Sasi, Rahal and one or two other devotees came in. The master asked Narendra to stroke his feet. He also asked him whether he had taken his meal. Master smiling to M, he went there referring to Bodh Gaya. Buddha's doctrines. M. To Narendra, what are the doctrines of Buddha? Narendra, he could not express in words what he had realized by his tapasya. So people say he was an atheist. Master, by science, why atheist? He was not an atheist. He simply could not express his inner experiences in words. The meaning of Buddha. Do you know what Buddha means? It is to become one with Bodha, pure intelligence, by meditating on that which is of the nature of pure intelligence. It is to become pure intelligence itself. Narendra, yes, sir. There are three classes of Buddhas: Buddha, Arhat, and Bodhisattva. Master, this too is a sport of God Himself, a new Leela of God. Why should Buddha be called an atheist? When one realizes Savarupa, the true nature of one's self, one attains a state that is something between Asti is and Nasti is not. Narendra to M. It is a state in which contradictions meet. A combination of hydrogen and oxygen produces cool water, and the same hydrogen and oxygen are used in the oxyhydrogen blowpipe. In that state, both activity and non-activity are possible. That is to say, one then performs unselfish action. Worldly people who are engrossed in sense objects say that everything exists asti, but the Mayavadis, the illusionists, say that nothing exists na asti. The experience of a Buddha is beyond both existence and non-existence. Master, this existence and non-existence are attributes of Prakriti. The reality is beyond both. The devotees remained silent a few moments. Master to Narendra, what did Buddha preach? Narendra, he did not discuss the existence or non-existence of God, but he showed compassion for others all his life. A hawk pounced upon a bird and was about to devour it. In order to save the bird, Buddha gave the hawk his own flesh. Narendra's enthusiasm about Buddha. Sri Ramakrishna remained silent. Narendra became more and more enthusiastic about Buddha. Narendra, how great his renunciation was. Born a prince, he renounced everything. If a man has nothing, no wealth at all, what does his renunciation amount to? What does his renunciation amount to? After attaining Buddhahood and experiencing nirvana, Buddha once visited his home and exhorted his wife, his son, and many others of the royal household to embrace the life of renunciation. How intense his renunciation was. But look at Vyasa's conduct. He forbade his son Sukadeva to give up the world, saying, my son, practice religion as a householder. Sri Ramakrishna was silent, as yet he had not uttered a word. Narendra, Buddha did not care for Shakti or any such thing. He sought only Nirvana. Ah, how intense his dispassion was. When he sat down under the Bodhi tree to meditate, he took this vow. Let my body wither away here if I do not attain Nirvana, such a firm resolve. This body indeed is the great enemy. Can anything be achieved without chastising it? Sasi, but it is you who say that one develops sattva by eating meat. You insist that one should eat meat. Narendra, I eat meat, no doubt, but I can also live on rice, mere rice, even without salt. After a few minutes, Sri Ramakrishna broke his silence. He asked Narendra by sign whether he had seen a tuft of hair on Buddha's head. Narendra, no sir, he seems to have sort of crown. His head seems to be covered by strings of Rudraksha beads placed on top of one another. Master, and his eyes, Narendra, they show that he is in a samadhi. Master, about himself. Sri Ramakrishna again became silent. Narendra and the other devotees looked at him intently. Suddenly, a smile lighted his face and he began to talk with Narendra. M was fanning him. Master to Narendra, well, here you find everything, even ordinary red lentils and tamarind. Is not that so, Narendra? After experiencing all those states, you are now dwelling on a lower plane. M to himself, yes, after realizing all these ideals, he is now living as a bhakta, a devotee of God. Master to Master, someone seems to be holding me to a lower plane, Master's vision of God. Saying this, Sri Ramakrishna took the fan from M's hand and said, as I this fan directly before me, in exactly the same manner have I seen God, and I have seen. With these words, he placed his hands on his heart and asked Narendra by a sign, can you tell me what I said? Narendra, I have understood. Master, tell me. Narendra, I did not hear you well. Sri Ramakrishna said again by a sign, I have seen that he and the one who dwells in my heart are one and the same person. Narendra, yes, yes, Soham, I am he. Master, but only a line divides the two that I may enjoy divine bliss. Narendra to M. Great souls, even after their own liberation, retain the ego and experience the pleasure and pain of the body that they may help others to attain liberation. It is like kuli work. We perform kuli work under compulsion, but great souls do so of their own sweet pleasure. Again all fell into silence. After a time, Sri Ramakrishna resumed the conversation. Master to Narendra and the others. The roof is clearly visible, but it is extremely hard to reach it. Narendra, yes, sir, master, but if someone who has already reached it drops down a rope, he can pull another person up. Different kinds of samadhi. Once a sadhu from Hrishikesh came to Dakshineshwar. He said to me, how amazing I find five kinds of samadhi manifested in you. Just as a monkey climbs a tree, jumping from one branch to another, so else does the Mahavayu, the great energy, rise in the body, jumping from one center to another, and one goes into samadhi. One feels the rising of the great energy as thought it were the movement of a monkey, just as a fish darts about in the water and roams in great happiness, so also does the Mahavayu move upward in the body and one goes into samadhi. One feels the rising of the great energy as though it were the movement of a fish. Like a bird hopping from one branch to another, the Mahavayu goes up in the tree of the body, now to this branch and now to that. One feels the rising of the great energy as though it were the movement of a bird. Like the slow creeping of an ant, the Mahavayu rises from center to center. When it reaches the Sahasrara, one goes into Samadhi. One feels the rising of the great energy as though it were the moment of an ant. Like the wriggling of a snake, the Mahavayu rises in a zigzag way along the spinal column till it reaches the Sahasrara and one goes into Samadhi. One feels the rising of the great energy as though it were the moment of a snake. Rahal to the other devotees, let us stop here. He has already talked a great deal. It will aggravate his illness. Monday, April 12, 1886. About 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Sri Ramakrishna was sitting on the bed in his room in the Kasipur garden house. Sasi and M were with him. He asked M by a sign to fan him. There was a fair in the neighborhood in celebration of the last day of the Bengali year. A devotee whom Sri Ramakrishna had sent to the fair to buy a few articles returned. What have you brought? The master asked him. Devotee, candy for 5 pice, a spoon for 2 pice, and a vegetable knife for 2 pice. Master, what about the pen knife? Devotee, I could not get one for 2 pice. Master eagerly, go quickly and get one. M was pacing the garden. Narendra and Tarak returned from Calcutta. They had visited Grace Goshi's house and other places. Tarak, we have eaten a great deal of meat and other heavy stuff today. Narendra, yes, our minds have come down a great deal. Let us practice tapasya to M. What slavery to body and mind. We are just like coolies, as if this body and mind were not ours but belonged to someone else. In the evening, lamps were lighted in the house. Sri Ramakrishna sat on his bed facing the north. He was absorbed in contemplation of the Mother of the Universe. A few minutes later, Fakir, who belonged to the priestly family of Balaram, recited the hymn of forgiveness addressed to the Divine Mother. Sasi M and 2 or 3 other devotees were in the room. After the recital, Sri Ramakrishna, with folded hands, very respectfully bowed to the deity. M was fanning Sri Ramakrishna. The master said to him by signs, get a stone cup for me that will hold a quarter of a seer of milk, white stone. He drew the shape of the cup with his finger. M, yes, sir, master. When eating from other cups, I get the smell of fish. Tuesday, April 13, 1886. It was about 8 o'clock in the morning. M had spent the night at the garden house. After taking his bath in the Ganges, he prostrated himself before Sri Ramakrishna. Ram had just come. He saluted the master and took a seat. He had brought a garland of flowers which he offered to the master. Most of the devotees were downstairs, only 1 or 2 were in the master's room. Sri Ramakrishna was talking to Ram. Master, how do you find me? Ram, in you one finds everything. Presently there will be a discussion about your illness. The master smiled and asked Ram by a sign, will there really be a discussion about my illness? Sri Ramakrishna's sleepers were not comfortable. Dr. Rajendra Datta intended to buy a new pair and had asked for the measurement of his feet. The measurement was taken. Sri Ramakrishna asked M by a sign about the stone cup. M at once stood up. He wanted to go to Calcutta for the cup. Master, don't bother about it now. M, sir, these devotees are going to Calcutta. I will go with them. M bought the cup in Calcutta and returned to Kasipur at noon. He saluted the master and placed the cup near him. Sri Ramakrishna took the cup in his hand and looked at it. Dr. Rajendra Datta, Dr. Srinath, Rakhal Haldhar, and several others came in. Rakhal, Sasi, and the younger Naren were in the room. The physicians heard the report of the master's illness. Dr. Srinath had a copy of the Gita in his hand. Dr. Srinath to his friends, everything is under the control of Prakriti. Nobody can escape the fruit of past action. This is called Prarabdha, power of God's name. Master, why if one chants the name of God, meditates on him and takes refuge in him? Dr. Srinath, but sir, how can one escape Prarabdha, the effect of action performed in previous birth? Master, no doubt a man experiences a little of the effect, but much of it is cancelled by the power of God's name. A man was born blind of an eye. This was his punishment for a certain misdeed he had committed in the past birth, and the punishment was to remain with him for 6 more births. B, however, took a bath in the Ganges, which gives one liberation. This meritorious action could not cure his blindness, but it saved him from his future birth. Dr. Srinath, but sir, the scriptures say that nobody can escape the fruit of karma. Dr. Srinath was ready to argue with the master. Master to M, why don't you tell him that there is a great difference between the Iswara Koti and an ordinary man? An Iswara Koti cannot commit sin. He don't you Why don't you tell him that? M remained silent and then said to Rakhal, you tell him. After a few minutes the physicians left the room. Sri Ramakrishna was talking to Rakhal Haldhar. Haldhar. Dr. Srinath studies Vedanta. He is a student of the Yoga Vasishtha. Master, a householder should not hold the view that everything is illusory like a dream. Referring to a man named Kalidas, a devotee said he too discusses Vedanta but he has lost all his money in lawsuits. Master smiling, yes, one proclaims everything to be Maya and still one goes to court to Rahal. Mukherjee of Janai too talked big, but at last he came to his senses. If I were well, I should have talked a little more with Dr. Srinath. Can one obtain jnana just by talking about it? Haldhar, you are right, sir. I have seen enough of jnana. Now all I need to in order to live in the world is a little bhakti. The other day I came to you with a problem on my mind and you solved it. Master eagerly, what was it? Haldhar, sir, when that boy pointing to the younger Naren came in, you said he had controlled his passions. Master, yes, it is true. He is totally unaffected by worldliness. He says he does not know what lust is. To M, just feel my body, all the hair is standing on end. The master's hair actually stood on end at the thought of a pure mind totally devoid of lust. He always said that God manifests himself where there is no lust too. Rakhal Haldar took his leave. Sri Ramakrishna was seated with the devotees. A crazy woman had been troubling everybody in order to see the master. She had assumed towards him the attitude of a lover and often ran into the garden house and burst into the master's room. She had even been beaten by the devotees, but that did not stop her. Sasi, if she comes again, I shall show her out of the place. Master tenderly, no, no, let her come and go away. Rakhal, at the beginning I too used to feel jealous of others when they visited the master, but he graciously revealed to me that my Guru is also the Guru of the universe. Has he taken this birth only for a few of us? Sasi, I do not mean that. But why should she trouble him when he is ill and she is such a nuisance, Rahul? We all give him trouble. Did we all come to him after attaining perfection? Have not we caused him suffering? How Narendra and some of the others behave in the beginning, how they argued with him. Sasi, whatever Narendra expressed in words he carried out in his actions. Rahul, how rude Dr. Sarkar has been to him. No one is jealous if it comes to that. Master to Rahul tenderly, will you eat something? Rahul, not now, later on. Sri Ramakrishna asked M by a sign whether he was going to have his meal there. Rahul to M, please take your meal here. He is asking you to. Sri Ramakrishna was seated completely naked. He looked like a 5-year-old boy. Just then the crazy woman climbed the stairs and stood near the door. M in a low voice to Sasi, ask her to salute him and go away. Don't make any fuss. Sasi took her downstairs. It was the first day of the Bengali year. Many women devotees arrived. They saluted Sri Ramakrishna and the Holy Mother. Among them were the wives of Balram and Manomohan and the Brahmini of Bagh Bazar. Several of them had brought their children along. Some of the women offered flowers at the master's feet. Two young girls, 9 or 10 years of age, sang a few songs. First they sang, we mourn for rest, alas, but rest can never find. We know not, we know not whence we come, nor where we float away. Time and again we treat this round of smiles and tears. In vain we pine to know whither our pathway leads and why we play this empty play. Then they comes, there comes Radha and there's see your Krishna with arcing eyes and the flute at his lips, and finally, O tongue, always repeat the name of Mother Durga, but who but your Mother Durga will save you in distress. Sri Ramakrishna said by a sign, that is good. They are singing of the Divine Mother. The Brahmini of Bagh Bazar had the nature of a child. Sri Ramakrishna told Rakhal by a sign to ask her to sing. The devotees smiled as the Brahmini sang, O Hari, I shall sport with you today, for I have found you alone in the Nidhu wood. The women devotees went downstairs. It was afternoon. M and a few other devotees were seated near the master. Narendra came in. He looked, as the master used to say, like an unsheathed sword. Narendra sat down near the master and within his hearing expressed his utter annoyance with women. He told the devotees what an obstacle women were in the path of God realization. Sri Ramakrishna made no response. He listened to Narendra. Narendra said again, I want peace. I do not care even for God. Sri Ramakrishna looked at him intently without uttering a word. Now and then Narendra chanted, Brahma is truth, knowledge, the infinite. It was 8 o'clock in the evening. Sri Ramakrishna sat on his bed. A few devotees sat on the floor in front of him. Surendra arrived from his office. He carried in his hands 4 oranges and 2 garlands of flowers. Now he looked at the master and now at the devotees. He unburdened his heart to Sri Ramakrishna. Surendranath's faith. Surendra looking at M and the others. I have come after finishing my office work. I thought, what is the good of standing on two boats at the same time? So I finished my duties first and then came here. Today is the first day of the year. It is also Tuesday, an auspicious day to worship the Divine Mother. But I did not go to Kali Ghat. I said to myself, it will be enough if I see him who is Kali herself and who has rightly understood Kali. Sri Ramakrishna smiled. Surendra, it is said that a man should bring fruit and flowers when visiting his guru or a holy man. So I have brought these to the master. I am spending all this money for you. God alone knows my heart. Some people feel grieved to give away a penny, and there are people who spend 1,000 rupees without feeling and hesitation. God sees the inner love of a devotee and accepts his offering. Sri Ramakrishna said to Surendra by a nod that he was right. Surendra, I could not come here yesterday. It was the last day of the year, but I decorated your pictures with flowers. Sri Ramakrishna said to him by a sign, ah, what devotion. Surendra, as I was coming here, I brought these two garlands for Anaj. Almost all the devotees took their leave. The master asked them to stroke his legs and fan him. Friday, April 16, 1886. The moon was shining brilliantly, flooding the garden paths. The trees and the water of the lake with its white rays. Grace M. Latu and a few other devotees were seated on the steps leading to the lake. The houses stood to the west of the lake. A lamp burnt in the master's room on the second floor. Sri Ramakrishna was sitting on his bed. There were several devotees in the room. A few minutes later, Grace and M were strolling along a garden path lined with flowering plants and fruit trees. How beautiful this moonlight is! Perhaps nature has had the same laws from time out of mind. Greece, how do you know that? There is no change in the uniformity of nature. European scientists have been discovering new stars through the telescope. There are mountains on the moon. They have seen them. Grace, it is difficult to be sure of that. It is hard for me to believe it. Why? The mountains have been observed through the telescope. Grace, how can you be sure that they have been rightly observed? Suppose there are other things between the moon and the earth. Light passing through them may conjure up such visions. Narendra, Rakhal, Niranjan, Sarat, Sasi, Baburam, Kali, Jogan, Latu and a few other devotees, young devotees, had been living at the Kasipur garden house in order to nurse Sri Ramakrishna. That evening, Narendra, Kali, and Tarak had gone to Dakshineshwar. They were going to spend the night in the Panchavati meditating on God. Grace, Latu, and M went to Sri Ramakrishna's room and found him sitting on the bed. Sasi and the one or two devotees had been tending the master. Baburam, Niranjan, and Rakhal also entered the room. It was a large room. Some medicines and a few other accessories were kept near the bed. One entered the room by a door at the north end. Since Sri Ramakrishna had to be tended all night, the devotees stayed awake by turns. The devotees who tended him fixed Sri Ramakrishna's mosquito net and then either lay on a mat on the floor or spend the night sitting up. Since Sri Ramakrishna got very little sleep on account of his illness, his attendants too slept very little. Master's love for Greece. That evening Sri Ramakrishna was somewhat better. The devotees saluted the master and sat down on the floor. The master asked M to bring the lamp near him. He greeted Greece cordially. Master to Greece, are you quite well? To Latu, prepare a smoke for him and give him a betel leaf. A few minutes afterwards, he asked Latu to give Greece some refreshments. Latu said that they had been sent for. Sri Ramakrishna was sitting up. A devotee offered him some garlands of flowers. Sri Ramakrishna put them around his neck one by one. Was he thus worshipping God who dwelt in his heart? The devotees looked at him wonderingly. He took two garlands from his neck and gave them to Greece. Every now and then Sri Ramakrishna asked whether the refreshments had been brought. M was fanning the master. On the bed was a sandalwood fan, the offering of a devotee. The master gave it to M, who continued to fan him with it. He also gave M two garlands. M had lost a son aged 7 or 8 about a year and a half before. The child had seen the master many a time. Latu was telling Sri Ramakrishna about M. Latu, M wept bitterly last night at the sight of some books that had belonged to his dead child. His wife is almost mad with grief. She sometimes treats her other children violently. She creates a scene at home because he spends the night here now and then. Sri Ramakrishna seemed worried to hear of this. Grace, it is nothing to be wondered at. Even after receiving the instruction of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna fainted from grief at the death of his son Abhimanyu. Grace was given the refreshments on a tray. Sri Ramakrishna took a grain and Grace accepted the rest as prasad. He sat in front of the master and began to eat. He needed water to drink. There was an earthen jug in the southeast corner of the room. It was the month of April and the day was hot. Sri Ramakrishna said, there is some nice water here. The master was so ill that he had not enough strength even to stand up. And what did the disciples seem to see to their utter amazement? They saw him leave the bed completely naked and move towards the jug. He himself was going to pour the water into a tumbler. The devotees were almost frozen with fear. The master poured the water into a glass. He poured a drop or two into his hand to see whether it was cold. He found that it was not very cold, but since nothing better could be found, he reluctantly gave it to Grish. Grish was eating the sweets. The devotees were sitting about and M was fanning Sri Ramakrishna. Grish to the master. Biben Babu has decided to renounce the world. On account of his illness, Sri Ramakrishna could hardly talk. Touching his lips with his finger, he asked Grace, by signs, who will feed his wife and children? Grace, I do not know. The other devotees remained silent. Grace began talking again while he ate the refreshments. Grace, sir, which is wiser to renounce the world regretfully or to call on God, leading to a householder's life? Master to M. Have not you read the Gita? One truly realizes God if one performs one's worldly duties in a detached spirit. If one lives in the world after realizing that everything is illusory, those who regretfully Renounce the world belong to an inferior class. Do you know what a householder Gyani is like? He is like a person living in a glass house. He can see both inside and outside. Again, there was silence in the room. Master to M. The refreshments are hot and good. M to Greece. Yes, they were bought from Fago's shop. The place is famous. Master smiling. Yes, famous Greece. They are really nice too. The master. Sir, my mind is now on a very lofty plane. Why does it come down again? Nature of the mind, master, that always happens when one leads a worldly life. Sometimes the householder's mind goes up, sometimes it goes down. Sometimes he feels a great deal of devotion, sometimes he feels less. This happens because he lives in the midst of women and gold, monks and householders. Sometimes a householder contemplate, contemplates God or chants his name, and sometimes he diverts his mind to woman and gold. He is like an ordinary fly which now sits on a sweet meat and now on field or rotting swords. But it is quite different with a sannyasi. They are able to fix their minds on God alone, completely withdrawing them from woman and gold. They can enjoy the bliss of God alone. A man of true renunciation cannot enjoy anything but God. He leaves any place where people talk of worldly things. He listens only to spiritual talk. A man of true renunciation never speaks about anything but God. The bees light only on flowers in order to sip honey. They do not enjoy anything else. Greece went to the small terrace to wring his hands. Master to him. A man needs the grace of God to fix his whole mind on him. Well, Greece has eaten a great many sweets. Tell him not to eat anything else tonight. Greece returned to the room and sat in front of the master. He was chewing a betel leaf about Rahal. Master to Greece, Rahal has now understood what is good and what is bad, what is real and what is unreal. He lives with his family, no doubt, but he knows what it means. He has a wife and a son has been born to him, but he has realized that all these are illusory and impermanent. Rahal will never be attached to the world. He is like a mud fish. The fish lives in the mud, but there is not the slightest trace of mud on its body. Greece, sir, I do not understand all this. You can make everyone pure and unattached if you want to. You can make everyone good, whether he is a worldly man or a sannyasi. The Malaya breeze, I believe, turns all trees into sandalwood. Master, not unless there is a substance in them. There are a few trees, the cotton trees for instance, which are not turned into sandalwood. Greece, I do not care, master, but this is the law. Greece, but everything about you is illegal. The devotees were listening to this conversation in great amazement. Every now and then the fan in M's hand stopped moving. Master, yes, that may be true. When the river of Bhakti overflows, the land all around is flooded with water to the depth of a pool. When a man is inebriated with divine love, he does not abide by the injunctions of the Vedas. He picks durva grass for the worship of the deity, but he does not clean it. He picks whatever he lays his hands on. While gathering tulsi leaves, he even breaks the branches. Oh, what state of mind I passed through. To M. When one develops love of God, one needs nothing else. M. Yes, sir, master. But a devotee must assume towards God a particular attitude. God, in his incarnation as Rama, demonstrated Sanatana, Dasya, Vatsalya, and Sankhya, but Krishna demonstrated Madhur besides all these. Radha's love for Krishna. Radha cherished the attitude of Madhur towards Krishna. Her love was romantic, but in the case of Sita, it was the pure love of a chaste wife for her husband. There was no romance in her love, but all this is the Leela of God. He demonstrates different ideals to suit different times. The crazy woman. A crazy woman used to accompany Vijay Goswami to the Kali temple at Dakshineshwar and sing for Sri Ramakrishna. Her songs were about Kali. She also used to sing the songs of the Brahmos. The devotees called her Pagli and tried to keep her away from the master to Greece and the others. Pagli cherishes the attitude of Madhur towards me. One day she came to Dakshineshwar. Suddenly she burst out crying. Why are you crying? I asked her. And she said, Oh, my head is itching. All laugh. Another day I was eating when she came to Dakshineshwar. She suddenly said, Won't you be kind to me? I had no idea of what was passing through her mind and went on eating. Then she said, Why did you push me away mentally? I asked her, What is your attitude? She said, Madhur. Ah, I said, But I look on all women as manifestations of the Divine Mother. All women are mothers to me. They, Thereupon she said, I do not know all about that. Then I called Ramlal and said to him, Ramlal, listen to her. What is she talking about? This pushing away mentality. Even now she keeps up that attitude. Grace. Blessed indeed is Pagli. Maybe she is crazy. Maybe she is beaten by the devotees, but she meditates on you 24 hours a day. No matter how she meditates on you, no harm can ever befall her. Sir, how can I express my own feelings about it? Think what I was before and what I have become now by meditating on you. Formerly I was indolent, now that indolence has turned into resignation to God. Formerly I was a sinner, now I have become humble. What else can I say? The devotees remained silent. Rakhal expressed his sympathy for Pagli. He said, We all feel sorry for her. She causes so much annoyance, and for that she suffers too. Niranjan to Rakhal, you feel that way for her because you have a wife at home, but we could kill her. Rakhal sharply, such bragging, how dare you utter such words before him, meaning Sri Rama Krishna. Master to Greece, women and gold alone is the world. Many people regard money as their very lifeblood, but however you may show love for money, one day perhaps every bit of it will slip from your hand. In our part of the country, the farmers make narrow ridges around their paddy fields. You know what those ridges are. Some farmers make ridges with great care all the way around their fields. Such ridges are destroyed by the rush of the rainwater, but some farmers leave a path of the ridge open and put sod there. The water flows through the sod, leaving the field covered with silt. After the rain, they reap a rich harvest. Good use of money. They alone make good use of their money who spend it for the worship of God or the service of holy men and devotees. Their money bears fruit. I cannot eat anything offered by physicians, I mean those who traffic in human suffering. Their money is blood and pus. Sri Ramakrishna mentioned two physicians in this connection. Greece. Dr. Rajendra Datta is a generous person. He does not accept a penny from anybody. He gives away money in charity. Saturday, April 17, 1886. It was the night of the full moon. For some time, Narendra had been going to Dakshineshwar daily. He spent a great deal of time in the Panchavati in meditation and contemplation. This day he returned from Dakshineshwar in the evening. Tarak and Kali were with him. It was 8 o'clock in the evening, moonlight and the south wind added to the charm of garden house. Many of the devotees were meditating in the room downstairs. Referring to them, Narendra said to them, "They are shedding their upadhis one by one." A few minutes later, M came into Sri Ramakrishna's room and sat down on the floor. The master asked him to wash his towel and the spittoon. M washed them in the reservoir. Master's anxiety about M's wife. So at this juncture, I conclude this video. Please comment, share and like the video and subscribe the channel. Namaskar my dear friend. Thank you. Next video number 56 will start with chapter number 50. Master's anxiety about M's wife. Thank you. Namaskar.